Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of our facilities management program here on Facebook Live, on YouTube, etc. I just want to encourage everyone to remember to join us every 2 weeks. We'll be on here going through some great content as far as the journey after you own your property. So this idea of holding onto your property for generational wealth is a big focus for me, as opposed to this idea of buying and flipping properties where it's a sort of rinse and repeat process. So when you're buying and holding property, you obviously need to start thinking with more of a maintenance mindset, and we sort of box that into a facilities management program as we go forward. So over the last couple of months, we've been working through a couple of sections. 2 weeks ago, we did a section on maintenance. And I think maintenance can just, that was probably 4 weeks ago. We did the maintenance. 2 weeks ago, we did utilities. But in general, maintenance, we can dig super deep into it. Utilities then unravels a huge element that we need to be aware of. And today, we're going to focus on your cleaning and care of your properties. So a little bit of a straightforward session today around the cleaning. I think we generally have a grasp of what is necessary, but one of the things that I really want to focus on today is this idea that we tend to buy properties and then have a tenant placed into it and we forget about it. So we'll leave our managing agent to go and review the property, look at how it's performing, or should I say, look after the maintenance, look after the care and upkeep of the property, when in reality that's not the agent's job. And to take it further, the agent doesn't have that sense of ownership, and when you own something you care a lot more about it. So as the agent, they're just doing a service. They're going to do as much as they need to, and often not more than they need to. So it's important for you to really take awareness of that and make sure you take control of the upkeep of your properties. So maintenance is a big thing that you should look after. And as part of that, the cleaning of your properties, so upkeep and cleaning of your properties becomes your responsibility. And the reason this is important, like we know that we're handing over the property to a tenant, so they're taking occupation, they're operating under a lease. The element of that is, or the temptation is, hey, it's your responsibility, Mr. Tenant. You make sure it's kept in a good condition. And I think that's a dangerous temptation to let go or to get into, where we still need to be aware of certain things that you should be looking after. And I think, again, it comes down to, yes, you can go there and instruct the tenant to clean certain things, instruct the tenant to look after certain things in a better way that you want them to be doing. And because that obviously ultimately affects you. So the cleaning of your property is important for you to be aware of in that whole parcel of maintenance. And when I start thinking of cleaning, I'm thinking of things like bathrooms, because bathrooms tend to be these high humidity areas. They're normally closed off. In winter especially, tenants tend to close all the windows. If you don't have any air bricks in the bathrooms, etc., or extractor fans, those bathrooms get super humid, and that sort of creates the perfect environment for mold to grow and for sort of that damp damage in your bathrooms. So for me, that's a big one that I'm constantly aware of. And then there's sort of the outside of the property, where it's the external walls, the driveways, the paving, etc. These are things that need a little bit more upkeep, and I think we'll potentially cover it more in the landscaping side as far as the outside of the building goes. But there are certain areas that you need to pay attention to. And then another example of outside is sort of your roof, your gutters, your downpipes, your stormwater drains, all of those sort of things. Those are super important for you. So yeah, starting at the beginning on bathrooms, I think this is a big one that is important on your buy to let. So your properties that you're buying, you're holding, you're letting out to tenants. If you're doing commercial, it's the same situation. If you've got commercial units and they've got bathrooms, etc., there's a huge responsibility on you to keep the upkeep on those. And then obviously a good one is Airbnbs. So Airbnbs, it's very important to pay attention to this sort of thing, because often we forget that there's high turnover, high traffic. You're sending in a crew to clean them quickly and then moving on. So you need to have some kind of system to make sure that the bathrooms are kept super clean, because the last thing you want is a bad review as a result of like something that's been slightly overlooked. So with bathrooms, the most important thing I find is looking after your showers. And this is because the human body gives off fats. So when people are showering, there's a slow buildup of fat that sort of accumulates on the tiles in the bathroom, or in the shower itself, in the drains of the shower, etc. So you need to be aware of it. It's not a nice thing, but it's something that is a reality, and you need to be aware that that's something that you need to make sure you are cleaning off. So in an Airbnb space, obviously you're using quite heavy detergents, cleaning down those showers, etc., making sure that they're ready for the next tenant. In a buy-to-let, often we sort of neglect it to the sort of tenant changeover. So we'll let the current tenants wallow in that environment until it's time to change over tenants, and then you go and then you do a deep clean. So I want to try and encourage people to get away from that habit. Go in every quarter and do a quick inspection. Say, hey, Mr. Tenant, please, you need to look after the shower a bit better. And one of the products that I really suggest that you get hold of is, and I think it was Mr. Min, or one of those sort of spray bottle type products, and it's a mold and mildew cleaner. So that one works fantastically for showers. You just come in, you squirt it a little bit, let it stand for about 5 minutes, and then that sort of fatty mold related grime just rinses off so easily. Maybe you need to do that with a couple of coats of that. But that's a big suggestion for me, is that mold and mildew remover that's got some heavy chemicals in it, some bleach, some hydrogen peroxide in it, etc. And I'm sure probably some ammonias in that. So it kind of gives a good deep clean, and that washes it through. And then also paying attention to your drains themselves. So often that same fat buildup tends to start clogging the shower drains. So it's good to do sort of like a caustic soda sprinkle in there and let that just flush that out and eat away at any of that sort of buildup in the drains, etc. And it just makes it like sort of reduces the maintenance on it, because the last thing you want is a blocked drain. You need to then pull in a plumber, and 9 times out of 10 it happens after hours on a Friday evening or throughout the weekend, and you're then paying that extra cost for overtime rates on your plumbers. So yes, showers is a big one for me. And then when it also comes to your bathrooms itself, one of the things that I highly recommend is when you're doing your renovations, your sort of painting of bathrooms, is go and use a mildew resistant paint. So a lot of the products out there, the Plascons, the Dulux and so on, they have specific mildew resistant paints for bathrooms, for kitchens, those areas where you're going to have high humidity, and you paint your walls, ceilings with those paints. You are able to do different colors with them, but then what's nice about it is it's very hard for the mildew to take, and it also prevents it from taking. It kind of has a lifespan of sort of 5 years, and then that sort of chemical starts to not be as effective. So you're just paying attention to that. And what's nice about it is it's a high sheen, so it's very washable, and it's nice and easy for you to just rinse off, or should I say wash off the walls before that mildew takes sort of penetration on the buildings themselves. So that's a big one for me around the bathrooms. And then scaling out of there. So ventilation is a big one for all of your rental properties. So wherever you can have as much ventilation as possible, it's going to reduce that issue of the mildew mold building up in your properties. So throughout your property, make sure you try and get some form of ventilation in the properties. in South Africa, we've got quite a bad habit of really enjoying hot weather. So when it's cold, all of our tenants tend to close windows and really just box up and sort of create a hot box or a steam box in your property. So it's important, try and put ways into your property that it is ventilating well. So like your kitchens, if you've got extractor fans, make sure you realize the ultimate benefit of that is it's not allowing that steam to build up in the property, which allows the humidity that and that condensation, which is then impacted or has that knock-on effect of creating mold and so on. So ventilations are a very important one when it comes to that. And then when you within the units itself, pay attention to your grout. Obviously, every now and then you don't want to have such a dark buildup of the grouts and that. So you need to do a little bit more of a deeper clean on that. Carpets, I think us as property investors, we know to stay away from carpets as much as possible, unless you're in really cold areas where it just gives that sense of warmth to the property, which helps you with sort of higher value tenants. Obviously, in the lower LSM tenants, you want it to just be clean, easy to clean, hard wearing, etc. So stay away from carpets in those environments. And then the same thing with if you've got wooden floors, make sure you communicate with your tenant what detergents they can use on those floors. So, and for instance, a laminate, you obviously want to tell them, listen, please don't use a big spaghetti mop and pour tons of water on the floor, because that's going to affect the laminate, it's going to start popping, etc. And that's generally the same for most wood and hardwood floors, etc. So give your tenants the instruction the way that you want them to treat it. And I'm also not opposed to the idea of you sort of doing a welcome pack to your tenants to say, hey, welcome to my property. Here's a basic mop. Here's some cleaning detergent. This is what I'd like you to use in the future. Please, I expect you to keep this property nice and clean the way that you found it. And that's sort of like as a welcome pack, it encourages them that you're going to look after them, and then that sort of reinforces that they must look after your property. Then moving outside your property. So we tend to forget about the roof. It's out of sight, out of mind. One of the big things around most roofs, so if it's tiled, concrete tiled roofs, clay tiled roofs, etc., that roof is designed to breathe. So the tiles sit on top of each other, and there's a breathing gap between there. And the idea is it allows condensation to get out. A lot of contractors around waterproofing will be tempted to paint your whole roof, and they end up sealing those gaps between the tiles, which means that there's no ability for that condensation, vapor, etc., to leave the roof itself. So it's important to bear that in mind. And the same thing, when you've got a high buildup of dirt, that's going to start blocking that sort of passage for the ventilation in your roof, and that's going to cause problems. So if you've got buildup of dirt, mold, etc., try and clean that at least once a year. And then bearing in mind anything that's trapped on the roof, leaves, etc., are going to wash down into your gutters, and then that's going to cause you other problems where it then starts splashing against the walls because your gutters are overflowing incorrectly, and it's then splashing on the walls. And what happens with that is that splash on the wall creates other issues like damp, etc., whereas now the walls aren't designed to have that amount of water splashing on them too often. So that damp then penetrates through and causes you damp issues inside your building, etc. So you want to prevent that. So this is, again, preventative maintenance thing. Get up onto your roof, I would say, after every season. So just before you go into winter, make sure the roof is cleaned. After winter, so before you go into summer, make sure your gutters are cleaned, etc. Obviously, bearing in mind during winter, all the leaves fall off the tree, they tend to block the gutter. So we generally have less rain during winter, and we have a lot of rain during summer. So it's important to bear in mind that straight after winter, you need to clear those gutters, get any leaves out, any debris, any growth, dust, etc., that's going to now start allowing any sort of foliage, plants, etc., to start growing in your gutters. And you'd rather do it preventatively than now have to pull out a big tree or big plant or fern that's now grown in your gutter. And then traveling along the gutter, you then have your downpipes. Downpipe is designed to move the water away from the building. So the water runs along the gutter, down the downpipe, away from the building. You don't want those downpipes to be full and the water overflowing, splashing against your building. So bear that in mind. And also, I think I encourage owners of properties, if you got downpipes that are just sort of spilling out onto the lawn just against the wall, make sure you put extension pipes onto those, so as you push that water at least a meter away from the building, because you must remember that that water is going to soak into the foundation, and it's going to take like a 45-degree journey. And if your building is, your foundations are within that 45-degree angle, it's going to then start creating damp creep into your building itself as well. So the downpipes, extend them further away from your building, or have them flush into a soak away pit or a French drain further away from your building, etc. And that's just an added, the value of that is preventing the damp in your building itself. So those are important ones. And then the obvious ones are visual effects. So washing the outside of your building. We're aware that we need to budget towards painting a building every 7 to 10 years. So to make that last 10 years instead of 7 years, every couple of years or every year, get someone in to wash the outside of your building. It then helps prevent any sort of buildup of dust, which then prevents the attachment of any damp or like mildew growth or anything. So every year, try and get the outside of your building washed off. And that's just a quick sugar soap, wash it off. It's a quicker process than painting the whole building. It should be like a day or two's worth of labor that you can outsource and bring in, or if you're great and you're hands-on, do it yourself. So that's a nice preventative maintenance thing around cleaning. And then the same, the visual effect of your driveways being very dirty, your paving being dirty, that's an important one. Just from a perspective of a happy tenant means like repeating tenant, so they're not going to move out soon. They'll renew their lease, etc. Okay, and then obviously coming down that whole chain, so you've done your paving, you've done your driveways, etc. It's then to pay attention to storm water. So you've gone from your gutters, downpipes, cleaned your driveways, cleaned your paving, you then get into stormwater. And now obviously we look at what's happened in KZN with the huge floods. Cape Town's now gone through huge floods. We're expecting these sort of radical weather events, so we need to do this kind of preventative maintenance. So be aware of where your stormwater drainage is on your properties, and whether there's furrows or wash-off zones in your property. Make sure they're clear. Make sure there's no build-up of debris, build-up of rubbish, garden refuse, or anything like that that's potentially blocking the water from flowing off of your property, away from your buildings, etc. So because that's going to prevent an instance of flooding where there shouldn't be an instance of flooding. Your property has been designed by an engineer who's made sure they've taken into account the exit of your water. So that's a very important one. Open up any stormwater drains, clear out any debris, leaves, dirt, soil that's sort of built up in that. Make sure that your drains are sort of flowing cleanly, and there's not a back flow on the drains where they're overflowing, because that water should go to where it needs to go. So that's an important one. So wrapping this up, very important to think about cleaning and keeping your property clean. I really can't emphasize this more. It just makes a huge difference to how your property is looked after, and how it's sort of the maintenance. And again, my big thing is generational focus for your properties. You're building a generational journey. You want your kids to inherit these properties that really work with the limited amount of input. Yeah. Have a great weekend, everyone, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time.